All right. Thank you. Thanks for getting up on a Saturday morning and coming out here to hear me ramble a little bit. But I have a presentation for you that I think you're going to like. It comes out of our Secrets from Successful Syndication training that we've been doing for the last 5 or 6 years. And so the topic that I have today is about building your brand. And I'm going to give some personal examples. It's really, really simple. It's far more simple than you realize. So just a little bit about me. How many of you have heard the show before? Okay, so some of you know my voice. And how many of you have not heard the show before? Okay, so that's great. We'll tell you how you can listen to that. We've been broadcasting on conventional radio since 1997. I've only been affiliated with the show since, well, I met Robert Helms by listening to the show. Robert founded the show in 1997, and it's been broadcasting continuously ever since. In 2001, I met Robert, and we started doing investor education together. And in 2004, I became the co-host of the show. So I've been the co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show from 2004. And then after the financial crisis in 2008, we got a chance to hit the reset button and decided to take the radio show, which up to that time had just been a hobby, and actually turn it into the focal point of our business. And so that was my project, and I started working on that in 2009, and that's when we actually started podcasting. I didn't even know what a podcast was. We were podcasting before I knew what a podcast was. So our producer came to us and said, this is the future, you should be doing this. We said, fine, do that. And that's a lesson to all of you. If you have the right people around you that are smart, you don't have to be that smart. You just have to be smart enough to know when to say yes and when to say no. So it's more about being wise than being smart. And so I was smart enough to say yes. They started podcasting. And then a funny thing happened. We used to be a very geographic business where we had a big group of investors that we were working with geographically, and they'd come in and we'd do local seminars, very popular in the San Francisco Bay Area for many, many years, 10 years. And then we started getting people coming to our events from out of town. And we say, well, how did you hear about us? On the podcast. Pretty soon, more than half the people were coming from out of town. Pretty soon, we just shut down our whole geographic business and went 100% online. And today we fill rooms up with people from all over the world simply through the podcast, which costs us nothing. We just put it out there. And it's amazing. But when we went to work on trying to get our podcast to stand out, that's where it gets difficult. Because whatever you're going to do, if you want to go out there and you want to compete for properties, if you want to go out there and you want to syndicate and compete for investors, if you decide to prospect through content like we do, you are going to have a lot of competition. You have to have a unique message. You have to have a unique style. You have to have something that makes you stand out. That's what building your brand is all about. And so that was my mission, and that's kind of my expertise. My background is in sales and marketing. I've been involved in the financial services industry and in corporate sales, in office supplies of all things. I did that for a number of years. So I had both B2B background, business to business to consumer background. What I really didn't understand was the digital side of the world. And so it's taken us a while to really understand that, and we're still really working on it. But, you know, we now have Facebook, and we have Instagram, and we have LinkedIn, and if I can be just very candid with you, I don't know how to do any of those things. So I write, we interview people, we create ideas and content, and our team takes those things and turns them into the formats they need to be in to get out into the marketplace. So again, I want to encourage you, because one of the things that happens, I was just talking to Jim here, who came all the way in from Chicago. So he thinks this is summer. Whereas I came in from Arizona, and I think I'm at the North Pole. Anyway, so one of the things you have to be very careful about in your education, and I don't know really, I feel very badly. My MO is not to fly in, speak, and fly out, because the information is interesting, but it's really about the relationships. If I could have done it the way I had originally scripted it, I would have been here on Thursday night to meet with the other speakers. I would have been in every session yesterday learning myself, because I'm a student. I would have been at all the breakouts and networking. I would have been there last night. And I would be hanging around today, but the way I had my schedule scripted, I got in late last night, I speak this morning, and I got to be out of here at noon. So that's not our normal style. And that's another lesson for you. If you're a wallflower and you're at this event and you haven't talked to anybody yet, nobody knows that you're shy. So just go ahead and start talking to people, and you can present yourself any way you want. That's part of building your brand and building your network. And so live events have a real purpose. It's not about the information, though, because you can get the information online. You can get the information on a YouTube video. You can get the information on a podcast. It's not about information. You can read a book. You come to live events to network. You come to live events to be immersed in the subject matter. You come to live events to have conversations with like-minded people who are already knowledgeable in an area. When you rub your brain against other people's brains who have good ideas in their head, you can learn a lot, and you learn a lot faster. So take advantage of live events for what they are, and don't just think it's about information. This isn't like going to school. This is about building relationships, building networks, making impressions, and opening up strategic relationships, something else I'm going to talk about today. So one of the dangers, though, when you come and you think you're an A student, when you are an A student, when you've been taught your whole life that you have to study, you have to learn, you have to know the answers, and then there's going to be a test, and you're going to be judged and rewarded or punished based on how well you know the information. Anybody know what I'm talking about? And you come to an event like this, and all of a sudden you've got all these subject matter experts out there, and they're just giving you all of this great information, and you're rapidly taking notes, and you're taking screenshot pictures, and you're trying so desperately to figure out how to learn how to do everything there is about due diligence, property inspection, market analysis, demographics, economics, contract negotiation, financing, tax law, asset protection, right? You know what I'm talking about? It's like, whoa! So I'm just here to tell you, you don't really have to know that much. What you have to do is you have to know enough to be conversant so you can ask great questions of technical advisors who are way smarter than you, who make their livelihood staying very expert in their niche, and then you have to learn how to sew them all together into an overarching strategy and plan where they work together. It's a lot more about being a head coach than being a position player. Does that make sense? Is that helpful to anybody? Did anybody like that takes a lot of pressure off? Because I'm here to tell you, I'm not that smart. I only know how to do a few things, but I know how to do them really well, and then I leverage what I know how to do to get in relationships with people that are really smart about doing other things that I need to have done. And I spend most of my time trying to see the big picture, because if nobody sees the big picture in your investment business, if nobody sees the big picture, the long game in your portfolio, if you don't see it, who does? Nobody. Nobody. Everybody's down in the bowels of the ship running the equipment, and nobody's up at the top steering the ship. Nobody. Where are you headed? That's your job. Okay? So that doesn't have anything to do with what I'm about to talk about, but I just felt like saying it. I just felt like maybe that would help somebody out there. So there you go. So what I am here to talk about is building your brand. So he mentioned, I got a chance yesterday, I was in studio with Robert Kiyosaki. So Robert Kiyosaki started out as being this big guy on stage. It was 1,000 miles away. And oh my gosh, if I could ever just meet him, that would be amazing. And then that happened because we had him on the show. And then we kept going to events where he was. And pretty soon one day he remembered my name. And one day he said, hey, the last time I saw you, it looks like you've lost a little weight. He remembered what I looked like. I was like, wow, I'm making progress. So by showing up at a live event, it wasn't about learning his material. It was about building a relationship. So fast forward, we've been now friends for many years, and we do lots of things together. And I think most people in our space are very envious of the relationship we have with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad. And it's not the only great relationship we have, but it's probably in this space the most notable. But all that happened by building a brand and building a network. Robert Kiyosaki says in his book, and if you haven't read this book, because this is not his most famous book, but I think it's one of the best books he's ever written if you're really trying to make the leap from being an employee to being an entrepreneur, is Before You Quit Your Job. And in it he says all entrepreneurs need to be good in sales. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, I'm just here to break it to you, and I know some of you are going to gag on this, you have to get good in sales. Because if nobody sells anything, nothing happens. In fact, Tom Watson said that. Kenny McElroy, Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad advisor, says, sales solves nearly every problem. That quote came out of a strategy consultation we did together on our investor summit at sea. So every year we do this cruise. We're doing it for now. This will be our 17th year where we get a couple hundred investors together with a big faculty of thought leaders. And we spend a week together on a cruise ship. It's like this on a cruise ship for a week. And you're hanging out with big names, so it's awesome. And so one of the contests we had was for people who were referring their friends to come. And one of the guys that won came in. It was right after 2008, and his business had been decimated, and he barely was able to come on the summit. And he was so excited that he won the consultation, and the entire faculty of our summit at sea, like all the guys you just saw yesterday, it's like all of them sitting down with you over the conference table and focusing all their brain power on solving your problem. And so everybody's there, and we're all blah, blah, blah. And Ken McElroy's a master of understatement. He just goes, well, you know, sales pretty much solves every problem. And I went, wow, that's brilliant. So whatever problem you're facing right now, if you had more money, would it help? And the shortest path to more money is to sell something. So a lot of times what happens when people get broke is they sell their car, they sell their furniture, they sell their possessions, they sell their assets, because it's a short path to cash. But you can do the same thing by selling something that somebody else owns and just getting a referral fee or a commission. You can do it by buying something cheap and selling it higher. But if nothing sells, there's no money coming in the door. Does that make sense? I say sales is an essential survival skill, which I think I'm going to have up here in a minute. Tom Watson, when those of you that are old enough to remember, at one point at their heyday, IBM was known as the premier sales organization on planet Earth. If you could get into their sales training, it was life-changing. And I can tell you, because I had that opportunity when I was a very young man, I got a chance to get into their sales training. And it's powerful. But he says nothing happens until somebody sells something. There's no order to fill, there's no payroll, there's no operations, nobody gets a paycheck until somebody goes and sells something. So if you want to eat, you need to learn how to sell. All right? Salesmanship is an essential survival skill. I got wiped out in 2008. I was over-leveraged. I had a big mortgage company. I was making 6 figures a month. I had millions and millions of dollars in real estate all over Earth, mostly in the United States, a little bit overseas. And 2008 came, and I did not have a single dollar in the bank. Well, I mean, that's maybe an exaggeration, but I probably didn't have a comma in my bank balances, except for float, because I didn't need it. I had a $500,000 credit line. You know, I had one of those American Express cards that you can do whatever you want with. I had money coming in every month from my mortgage business. And so I was buying real estate, highly leveraged, negative cash flow, speculating on long-term growth. And when the credit markets seized, I had no operating capital. They shut off all my credit lines, even though I paid all my payments on time. Maybe some of you went through that. All my properties dropped in value, so I could not liquidate anything in my portfolio to generate cash. It was all upside down. My mortgage company had 100 loans in the pipeline in August of 2008. In September, we funded 0. Because every single person we were sending the paper to went out of business, all in 1 month. I would have never thought in 1,000 years that could happen to me. So I went from being like a multimillionaire to being completely lost my home, lost my cars, lost everything. But I know how to sell. So I sold my way out of it. Built it back up to multi-million dollars. We're the largest real estate developer in the country of Belize, $80 million project, no debt. From 2008 till now. I'm still cleaning up some messes. I got IRS issues. I got stuff I got to get cleaned up, right? It takes a long time to clean up a nuclear explosion. If you've been to New York, it took a long time for them to clean up, you know, what happened at 9/11. It didn't just get cleaned up overnight. My personal 9/11 was 2008. So when I say this, I'm not just saying it because it's a quotable quote. I'm telling you that if you have a major, and I hope you never do, right? I share a lot of the stuff I learned from what went wrong for me. But the thing that saved me was my ability to sell. And the thing that helped me is that I always had people to talk to because I had a brand and I had a network. So the most important asset you have is your brand and your network. You know what the Google name is worth? Almost $100 billion. Just the name. That's the power of a brand. Your brand is probably never going to be worth that. My brand's never going to be worth that. But I'm here to tell you, a lot of times we don't focus on that when we're out in the marketplace. We're concentrating on doing our deals, and we worry about what the value of the property is or what the value of the, whatever other assets we're dealing in. But we don't pay attention to our reputation. We don't pay attention to how big and powerful our network is. And see, the thing is, your balance sheet can get wiped out, but your reputation, if you take care of it, is going to be okay. You can blow your reputation in one day. You can spend 25 years building a great reputation. You look at guys like Tiger Woods that were like on the top, and then they do one stupid thing and it just blows everything up, right? So you have to be very, very careful. But so many people I see don't even have a strategy for it. They don't even realize it's important. They don't really care for it like the valuable asset that it is. And so I'm just here to tell you that wherever you're at in your business career, whatever business you're in, wherever you're trying to go, if you want to be at the top of the list for the best deals, if you want a great relationship with the guy from Figs, find out how to be their best customer. Find out how they make the most money off you, not the least. See the mentality? You know what a tip is to ensure prompt service? In the old days, rich people would give the person at the front end. You'd sit down at the table, you'd put down your money, and you'd say, take good care of me, because I'm going to take good care of you. That's how you want to be. Make sense? Okay. The good news is, for those of you that are gagging on the idea of that you have to be good at sales, it's a learnable skill. You learn to ride a bike, you learn to play musical instruments, you learn how to read and write, maybe you learned a second language, you learned whatever job skill you may have learned in college or whatever. So it's a learnable skill. The secret to successful selling, though, is not going into the marketplace with what you need, what you can take, it's what you can bring. Selling is simply matching a solution to a problem. And so if you just got done rehabbing a house and you're showing it to a prospect, you're helping them solve their problem. Do they care how much you need to get out of the property? They don't care. If you overimproved it, if you overspent, if you couldn't control your budget, that's on you. The market is only going to pay what it's worth. And they're going to pay more the more they understand how whatever you're providing for them solves their problem. It's never about you. It's always about them. Does that make sense? Simple concept. Most people aren't like that, though. Most people are hunters. Most people in sales, especially people in real estate, are hunters. They get up every day hungry. They go out in the marketplace and they look for prey. They find someone who expresses just a tiny bit of interest, and they dive on the jugular and they rip it out, flip it over, eat out the guts, leave the carcass, and go take a nap under a tree and wake up tomorrow and repeat the process. They don't care about a referral. They don't care about their reputation. They just care that they eat today. Anybody been through one of those? You timeshare owners out there? I'm sorry. Right? That's why salespeople have a bad rap. But that's not what it is. See, we're farmers. A farmer goes out and understands something. If I plant an apple seed and I nurture that apple seed and I take care of that tree and I tend to it faithfully day in and day out, year in and year out, what is that apple tree eventually going to do? It's going to produce apples. I don't have to negotiate with it. I don't have to persuade it. It's going to produce apples because it's in its nature. So when I got together with my partner, Robert Helms, we started an investor development program. I was in the mortgage business. He was in the real estate brokerage business. We had an obvious, symbiotic relationship. And so we didn't focus on developing transactions. We focused on developing investors because we had faith that if we developed an investor, what is an investor going to do by their very nature? Invest. And we're going to get transactions, but we don't have to force it because it's not on our timetable. We don't tell the apple tree when it's time to produce fruit. The apple tree decides. We create an environment where the apple tree can be healthy and do what it does. So when you're looking at your business, and I don't know, some of you are real estate agents, and you can totally stand out with this strategy, by the way. But if you take whoever it is that you want to do business with and you develop them and help them, then they will eventually do business with you because people will be loyal to you in direct proportion to the amount of personal growth and development and success they have as a result of you being in their life. If you are benefiting them by being in their life, you're going to stay in their life. If it was a horrible experience, you might have got the sale, but you did not win. So there's a very big difference between being a hunter and farmer. And so, Steve had mentioned on the front end, I personally interview every single provider or sponsor that comes into our world and becomes part of the Real Estate Guys family. And they get this speech from me every single time. And we let them know, there's no hard selling in our environment. There's no coercing people. There's no burning bridges. We're building long-term relationships. People get sometimes, if you listen to the show, it's like, God, you got the same ad. You've had the same ad for 10 years. That's true, because we have people who stay with us for a long time. We're building a tribe. We're not building a business of just flipping a bunch of transactions. We're building a community of people that do business together, that like each other, that trust each other, that are mutually invested in each other's success. If you approach your community that way, you will develop a brand of somebody that you're going to be on the short list of people that people want to bring deals to. Because as you get active, you may be thinking, hey, my big problem is I don't have enough money and credit. That's a simple problem to solve. The biggest problem to solve is, how do I get in the deal flow, and how do I get the best deals? How do I get to the top of the food chain? How do I get to the front of the line? How do I be the first phone call when that really, really good deal comes? You should be getting up every day thinking about how you can add so much value to the people who are bringing you deals that you're the number one person they want to call. Does that make sense? Right? I say it at a seminar, and they're like, yeah, that totally makes sense. But then you get out in the real world, and something happens. We get myopic. We get self-centered. We get selfish. So here's a key to successful selling. Assume the position and don't wiggle. I know, a little crude, but you'll remember it. Tiger Woods assumed a position, and then he wiggled. His reputation changed. Right? In social media, a lot of you, or some of you may, certainly younger folks, love to just chronicle their life in social media. Hey, look at me. This is me, drunk in my underwear. Okay. That's an interesting post. Or, if you're raising money from people and all of your social media posts are about you on vacation, what picture is that painting? Are you going to hand that person, here's my new Ferrari, and here's my new chateau, and here's my new private jet, and you're raising millions of dollars, and maybe you even haven't returned a check to your investors yet. What are your investors thinking? Be aware of those things. Pick a position in the marketplace. When Robert Helms and I got together, first thing we did is we went through this branding thing. We created our core values, and we decided what our images were going to be. And we decided we were going to be suit and tie guys. Now, not everybody's a suit and tie guy, and that's okay. You don't have to be a suit and tie guy. Steve Jobs was not a suit and tie guy. He had his look. He had a whole thing, just like Iron Man, just all black T-shirts, he just had his thing. That's what he wore. Kept it simple. Every day, that was his look. Donald Trump has a look. When you see Donald Trump, it's always the same. Dark suit, white shirt, solid tie. Going to be blue, pink, yellow, or red. That's it. That's his brand. IBM was exactly that way. Dark blue suit, white shirt, and then, a tie. And the tie was the only thing you had discretion over. So that's, your personal brand, how you show up. And I'll show you in a little bit why that's important. Because you want to get in position. So if you've been snoozing, or if you're like, is this guy ever going to say anything that I can relate to or use? Pay attention to this one. This is how you do it. So wherever you're at, if you want to take your brand to the next level, the first thing you do is ask yourself, how should I be presenting myself? When I show up in the marketplace, how do I present myself? How do I talk? How am I groomed? What am I driving? What am I wearing? What do I talk about? How do I present myself? Do I look like the kind of person my target avatar, my target person needs to see to trust me, to do business with me? Do a little self-assessment. If you don't like the image you're projecting, change it. Now, the people around you are going to be like, who are you? Get over it. You're just going to have to go through that. And some of the people that have been in your life aren't going to want to be in your life because they're not going to like the new you. Jim Rohn says you become the sum total of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if you look at where you're at in life and you look at the people you spend the most time with, you can learn a lot. You want to change your life? Change the people you hang out with. That's why live events are so great, because you can meet so many of the right kind of people, but you got to take it to the next level. The next thing is your associations. Now, I've already positioned myself in a pretty close association with Robert Kiyosaki. A lot of you didn't even know who I was when I came in here, but because Steve said nice things about me, because I'm positioned in the front of the room, because I have this relationship with Robert Kiyosaki. You've already made some assumptions about me. Now, of course, I have to continue to build upon that, and that's up to me with my presentation. But that's about positioning. It makes it easier to persuade someone when you have good positioning. Associations, so who you're associated with. It could be a professional organization. It could be the people you're seen with in public. It could be your advisors. So simple little thing. Let's say you're out there raising money and you are using, the Legal Shield or some, not to disparage, but I'm just saying that you're using somebody in the marketplace that everybody knows is the budget lawyer. And people who are active in an industry, in an area, will know who the A team is and who isn't. How do you think it looks versus I come in and I'm associated with the top firm in the area? Just that little thing, who I choose to engage with on my team. Who's on my team? That says something to my prospective investor about how serious I am about what I do, how successful I am. Should people judge you by how you look? No. Do they? Yes. Should people judge you by what you drive? No. Do they? Yes. Should they judge you by where you live? No. Do they? Yes. They judge you by who you hang out with. They do. So just understand that's the way it is. This isn't about what's right or wrong. This is just pragmatically what works. And sometimes you're in a little over your head in the beginning because you're trying to climb to the next level. The number one reason 2008 wiped me out was I blamed the Fed, I blamed all these other things, right? And then one day I woke up and I said, it's all on me. And the reason is because I was always the smartest guy in the room. I was in the wrong rooms. And when I realized that, I said, I just got my ass handed to me because I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm not learning, I'm not growing, I'm just pontificating. So I need to be around smarter people. So I went looking for smarter rooms, and fortunately through the asset that we had, which was the show and our brand, we were able to create smarter rooms. So I was able to have both great positioning and also be the dumbest guy in the room. And so of course I've learned, and I'm smarter than I was in 2008, and it's a constant challenge to continually try to find smarter and smarter and smarter people to hang out with. But that's something we work on all the time. Ultimately, you get to the point where you have endorsements. So it's one thing to say, shared the stage with Robert Kiyosaki, or Robert Kiyosaki was on your radio show, and that's interesting, but he's done that with a lot of folks. But when he comes out and he actually endorses you, he says, I've known these guys forever, they're the real deal, I like them, I trust them, I do business with them, and they put it on video and they put it on audio. If you've listened to the show, we have something called drop-ins. Those are more about associations. Do you know what those are, drop-ins? You guys ever listen to an old rock and roll, radio station and say, hi, this is, Phil Collin from Def Leppard, and you're listening to the whatever show. So we have, hi, this is Steve Forbes, hi, this is Donald Trump, hi, this is Peter Schiff, hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, hi. We have dozens of them. And we just insert them in the show from time to time. That's about association, but it's an implied endorsement. But we have overt endorsements. So at some point, you will have people who will endorse you. Just like at the beginning, I was endorsed by the host of the show. Great. Or the event. Accomplishments. At some point, you actually have to do something, right? You have to create something. You have to be able to say, hey, we've achieved this. So, to offset the fact that I told you about my complete failure in 2008, I offset it by mentioning that we're the largest real estate developer with an 80 million plus project on its way to hopefully $500 million when we get it all done in Belize. That's an accomplishment. So it was kind of an offset. So whatever you have to work with. Now, one of the things you can do to create accomplishments, this is something you should know. Let's just say that you are working to build a reputation so that you can convince people that you are worthy of their trust. And people have to trust you in three ways. They have to trust your character, they have to trust your competency, and they have to trust your commitment or your capacity. They have to believe that they can trust you, that you won't cheat them, even if you could. They have to know that you're competent. Because here's the problem. A competent person who has no ethics will cheat you like a surgeon. You won't even feel it. And then you wake up and you've been ripped off because they have no conscience. But a really, really nice person with no skills will totally screw everything up, and they will apologize profusely and feel so badly, but you still got hurt, right? So competency, they got to trust your character, your competency, and your commitment or your capacity, your willingness to give them your A game. Just because you have an A game doesn't mean you have the ability to give it to them. Conversely, when you're out there shopping for people to be on your team, those are the three things you're judging them on. So to get an accomplishment, let's just say that you've been investing in small properties and now you want to go do an apartment building, but you've never done an apartment building and you don't have enough money to do an apartment building, so you need to raise $2 million. And so you've got maybe $100,000 of your own money. You say, well, you could take that $100,000 and go find somebody who's already successfully investing in apartment buildings and invest your $100,000 with them. Learn from them, and then be able to point at the entire project and say, my partners and I did that. Is that a true statement? Is that an honest statement? Is that an ethical statement? Is it a powerful statement? Yes. And if that person who already knows what they're doing is on your advisory board, when you go to raise the money, you're able to say, we accomplished this, and the person I accomplished it with is sitting on the advisory board for this new project that we're about to go do. And then you take your profit from that project and roll it into this project, so you got skin in the game too, but now it's not just having money, but you also now have reputation and a reason for them to believe in your competency. Simple thing. Easy to do, easy not to do. But it will make the act of asking someone to put $100,000 or $200,000 into your deal a lot easier, because now you've put yourself in a position through your brand for them to have a greater reason to trust you. Does that make sense? Is that making sense to you guys? Okay. And then the other thing is just you got to be consistent. You know, I throw out the Tiger Woods thing. I mean, you could pick all kinds of different people, but you just got to be consistent. So, you know, you have to be what you see is what you get. I think one of the most important assets in the marketplace right now is authenticity. And people value authenticity. And it's so easy now for somebody to rat you out. You cannot afford to let your guard down anywhere at any time. You know, it's kind of Big Brother. Everything is videotaped. Everything is audio taped. You know, everything is posted everywhere for the world to see. Anybody can background check you in a heartbeat. I'm so happy because I was just a screw up when I was young, but none of that's documented anywhere. So if I don't say anything, nobody knows, right? I can't imagine what a presidential election is going to look like in 40 years when some of these 20-year-olds, right, are being vetted in their 60s to hold high office, and they've got this whole collection of things that they did in their 20s. It's been chronicled. If you're young out there, think long and hard about the picture that you're painting, because it's not just about entertaining your peeps today. It's about who people are going to think you are 20, 30, 40 years from now. The only saving grace is there's probably not, everybody is going to be able to document as a proven fact that God did not make any perfect people. Everybody's going to have a blemish. Everybody. All right. Power Brand Association. So here is pre-presidential candidate and presidential office holder Donald Trump sitting with Robert Kiyosaki on CNN on the Larry King Show. So these two guys, you may know, wrote a couple books together. Whose idea was that? Anybody know? It was Donald Trump's idea. It was Donald Trump's idea. Why would Donald Trump, who at that time, even then, arguably the biggest brand on the screen, why would he put the weight of his brand to this guy who hardly anybody knew? In our world, he's famous. But if you go out there on the street, you know, maybe 3 out of 10 people know who he is. So I walk around, I go to lunch with him. If I was with him, we would draw a crowd in a heartbeat. Every once in a while, somebody will go over and recognize him, you know, which is cool. But it's just like night and day. But why would Trump do that?
Association.
What's that?
Maybe the association that he's going to bring, because he's real estate, Trump's real estate.
Okay, close. So she's saying, yeah. Partnership, okay. So I'll tell you real quick. So Trump's number one skill, and I don't, whether you love him or hate him, his number one skill is branding. His number one skill is branding. He created a brand that's worth a lot. He makes a lot of money just licensing the brand. He took a gigantic risk and disparaged his brand quite a bit by going into politics. So I think anybody that says that Trump did it for money is crazy because it's cost him a fortune. But, that's the way I see it. But he's a master brander, and he used it during the primaries, right? He branded everybody, Lion Ted and Crooked Hillary, and he just branded everybody. He's a master at it. Branded. So Robert Kiyosaki is the world's greatest selling financial author, bar none. Nobody's even a close second. Donald Trump has written some books in finance and business, but he's never been as high up as Kiyosaki. So Trump's a master brander, but Kiyosaki is a master author. And Trump realized that he could grow his brand as an author by affiliating with a brand that was successful already, even though the overall brand was smaller. Is that making sense? You can do the same thing. Whether it's your vendors, whether it's your investors, whether it's your providers, whether it's the kind of deals you do, be strategic about picking things out that are going to help grow your brand. So this is Rich Dad's website. You can't really see it, but if you go to richdad.com and under About, they say Friends of Rich Dad. You've got Donald Trump and the real estate guys. And Richard Duncan, who some of you know is a best-selling author, economist, was an advisor to the IMF. Bert Doman, who's a well-known financial newsletter writer, and this guy who's a top commercial real estate broker in Arizona. So there's a couple more people, I think. No, there's nobody else underneath. It's just the five of us. So that's pretty rarefied earth, right? So I'm showing that to you for a couple of reasons. One is because before I was just showing you stuff, I was saying it. But now this is him saying it, a little stronger. But the other thing is I'm here to tell you that many, many people who had the opportunity to be there blew it because they were hunters. And I could tell you a story that I don't have time for. But look for people who are notable in their space that you can get this kind of co-branding with. And we didn't ask them to do it. They did it. Even better. The key is build strategic relationships. And so I think that's probably my core strength. I'm not as much of a master brander as Donald Trump, clearly, but I'm pretty good at building business-to-business or strategic relationships. So Robert Kiyosaki's not the person who put our face on his website because, trust me, just like me, he doesn't know how to do it. His team did it. So we built a relationship not only with Robert and Kim and their advisors, but we built a relationship with their organization. We get more done with Rich Dad through their organization than we do with Robert and Kim. And so it's really important when you're doing business in any environment, in an organization, you go in to see the attorney, be nice to that receptionist or that junior paralegal. When you're working with your real estate providers, your property managers, everybody's important. They all have their hands in the pot. They can all stab you in the back, or they can all, grease the skids and make it a lot easier for you. Be mindful of that. So if you want great questions, great answers, you got to ask great questions. So the first thing is what's your focus? When you go in the marketplace, what are you focused on? Most people are focused on money. What can the marketplace give me? What do I need? We don't look at people as dollar signs. We don't look at people as a transaction. Every one of you knows 10, 20, 30 really, really good people that I don't know. So I'm going to do everything I can to help you so that you feel great about introducing me to all of them. And if you take your eye off that ball, you don't get the referral. You don't get the goodwill. And when you do the math, because I'm a spreadsheet guy, I like to do math. No spreadsheets this morning, but let me show you what the math looks like. If you know one person who knows 10 people you don't know, and you influence that person to the point where they will refer you to their 10 friends, and you can have the same impact on those 10 friends can get you to 100. And those 100 can get you to 1,000, and those 1,000 can get you 6 layers in, and you've touched 1 million people. You have a big list. You have a big database, a big network. but not just a list, because you can go buy a list. In the old days, you could go buy a phone book. A phone book isn't, I mean, that's not valuable. What's valuable is the positioning to the list. When you pick up the phone, when the email hits the inbox, when the invite comes in to come to the event or whatever it is you're promoting, how do people see you? If you're referred by their friend whom they trust, it's far more powerful. If you can be affiliated with a brand that they know, but don't have a relationship with, great. So I walk in the room, a brand that you know and trust, Steve at the front says, hey, Russ is a good guy. You don't know me. You take his word for it. And then a brand that you know, that you're aware of, a Kiyosaki, but you don't maybe know personally, seconds the motion. That helps me in my positioning. You can do the same thing in your marketplace at whatever level, and you just keep ratcheting up. And if you stay steady, one day you will wake up and you will have some of the best relationships in the business like we do. And you'll have some of the smartest people, the most powerful people, the most influential people in a space running around saying nice things about you, and it makes everything else you have to do that much easier. So it's both the size of the network and the quality. So this is the second slide that if you've been snoozing, I want to make sure you get. Because again, this isn't rocket science, but you do have to focus on a few things. So you have to ask yourself, who's my target market? It depends. I don't know anything about you and your businesses. If you're a real estate agency, you have to kind of say, who's my perfect customer? Who's my avatar? I have a lot of customers and I'll do business with a lot of people, but if I could wake up one day and only do business with people just like this, center of the target, who is that person in great detail? Because everything you say, everything you do, everything you write, everywhere you network, all of your positioning is designed to impress that one person. But the good news is when you identify that one person, there's 1,000 people just like them in the marketplace. And if you put the right bait in the water, they will come to you because you'll be singing, sending music to their ears. They're going to come because they're going to be attracted to the messaging. If you try and be all things to all people, you're going to miss. Like we started out focusing, I got into the mortgage business and I could have said, I do investor loans, I do commercial loans, I do residential loans, I'll work with homeowners, work with first-time homeowners, I'll do high-end, I'll do low-end. I saw a lot of people do that, so I'm not going to do that. I said, so who do I really like to do business with? I don't like to do business with consumers. I don't like to go into the home. I don't like to deal with the husband and wife dynamics. I don't like to deal with the parents and the children dynamics. When you get grown kids, can't get out of bed without calling mom and dad. I just didn't like any of that. I said, I don't want to be that. Some people are great. My cousin and I were in the insurance business together, and I was very comfortable doing business to business because that's what I came out of. He was very comfortable going into people's homes with the cat crawling in his lap and the dog smelling his whatever. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. So I decided. I said, I'm going to work with investors. And then I had to really get to know them. And I had to ask myself, what they need. What do those people need? What do investors really need? And what I realized that they needed was they needed the ability to manage their cash flow, equity, and credit more effectively. They needed to learn how to unlock the power of their balance sheet. And so I created very specific financial strategies and trainings to teach them how to do that. And then I would do the math because it was very hard to refute the math. And I have this quote now that I'm known for, which is do the math and the math will tell you what to do. So I would explain the concept, do the math, and then the decision became easy. And I trained a whole team of people who did nothing but that. So we were very focused. The next question is, once you identify that avatar, where do they congregate? Could be they come together in a room like this. Could be that they all read a certain newsletter or listen to a certain podcast. It could be that they read a certain magazine, belong to certain organizations or demographics, affinity groups, if you will. You have to figure it out. Where are they, where I can get in front of them in volume, efficiently? That's what you're asking yourself. Where do they congregate? How can I get their attention? And ideally, you get their attention when they come to learn, right? If I called you up and interrupted you in your place of business and said, hey, I'd like to spend about an hour with you and tell you how to build your brand and build your network, you'd be like, you know what, I'm really busy. I'm not really interested, right? That's what you'd say. But instead, here you are, right? And you came here because you want to learn. Way easier for me. I would much rather talk to people who want to learn than try to force somebody who has zero interest in what I have to say to listen to me. So who and what influences them? This is the important thing. Once you've identified who the target market is and where they congregate, and a lot of times they congregate around their influencers, now you've got one key person. And if you can get to that one key person and win them, you influence everybody else who follows them. That's why people come to me, because I have a big following. And so guys like Fig, they call us up and like, hey, we want to get in front of your audience. How do we do that? Time check, 10, thank you. Okay, I'm going to have to pick this up. But this is good stuff here. So where do the influencers congregate? Then go there and find out what the influencers need. Because when you can meet the need of an influencer, then the influencer will be open to influencing on your behalf. We found out what Robert Kiyosaki needed. You think he doesn't need anything? Yes, he did. He needed some things. We figured out what those things were. We did those things for him, and his influence went to work for us. And it wasn't what a lot of people thought it was. We've never paid Robert. We've never hired him to come to our events or speak, but he shows up. We've never paid him for his endorsement because he doesn't need money. He's got all the money he wants. His problem is he has too much money. He has a different need. And we found out what his need was. We went to work on meeting it. And then now he calls us. The idea to do the promotions yesterday, we didn't call him and ask him if he would do that. He called us and asked us if we would come in to do it with him because he wanted to do it for us. Like, how'd you like to get to that level? I'm telling you, what I do, this absolutely, positively works. And then who and what influences the influencers, and what do the influencers need? So what's your angle? What's your approach? So I'll give you another one, another name you may not know, Brian London. Brian London is a renowned gold expert. If you're not paying attention to gold, let me tell you, you should be. Because it's an indicator of a lot of things. It's a real asset, just like real estate. It has a role to play in a real asset portfolio as an alternative to cash, to hold liquid net worth. And I could do a whole clinic just on gold. I spent the last 5 years studying gold. But Brian is the producer of the New Orleans Investment Conference, the oldest running investment conference in the United States. And so we went one year because he had an audience full of people we were interested in. The real estate market had been decimated. We looked around and said, who out there has money? People in the gold business at the time, gold was like 1900. People in gold had a lot of money. So we said, well, let's go there and get to know these people and see if we can get along with them. So we went and we just were in the audience participating, kind of got the lay of the land. And then the next thing we did is, once we decided after talking to some folks, yeah, we think we could get along with these people, we called up Brian and we invited him to be on the show because we had something to offer, and he agreed to do that. And then we got a chance to have a casual conversation with him about what he needed, and what he needed was more help promoting his event. And he needed more help getting sponsors to exhibit. And so we said, okay, we'll do that. And so we did. So we said, why would you promote somebody else's conference? Why would you send your sponsors to spend their sponsorship dollar with somebody else? Why would you promote your audience to spend their event dollars with somebody else? Why would you do that? Because we wanted his influence. And now we have it. Today, we fly in and we speak at the New Orleans conference. We MC at the New Orleans Investment Conference. We host the big party where all the VIPs come and we hang out with them. And he has been able to introduce us to all these other great people. Well, you know what Robert Kiyosaki likes to do? He likes to hang out with smart people. We introduced Robert Kiyosaki to Peter Schiff. We introduced Robert Kiyosaki to G. Edward Griffin. Who wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island. We introduced Robert Kiyosaki to Brian London. We introduced Robert Kiyosaki to, who else? There was one other person I had on my mind. Anyway, we've done the same thing with Chris Martenson and Adam Taggart from Peak Prosperity, and now we're working with them. They come on our events. We're doing a whole webinar series to their list about real estate investing. They're speaking at our summit at Sea in March. We're going to speak at their summit in California in April. This is exactly how we do it. I was an office supply salesman in Silicon Valley. Today, I have some of the brightest financial minds who read my newsletter and consider what I have to say worthy of their time. that invite me to be on their stages and talk to their audiences. Trust me, there's nothing special about me, except that I learned how to do this and I did it. And I'm like Forrest Gump, right? Just a couple little things, and I just focus and do it. Pretty soon you wake up and all this stuff happens. You guys can do it too. So figure out who your target market is and then go through this process to get in front of them. Don't be Waldo. When you go in the marketplace, don't look like everybody else. If you get lost in the crowd, if you look just like everybody else, if you're a mortgage person, you're out there, here's a box of donuts and a rate sheet, you're just like everybody else. So whatever your business is, try to figure out how to be different. This is a challenge, but if you can figure it out, you can set yourself aside. We started out coaching real estate investors, mom and pop investors investing in their own account. Pretty soon there was dozens of people in the space, and they copied our model. Kathy Fetke at Real Worth Network took our model, and she'll be the first person to tell you. She goes, I looked at what you guys are doing, I copied it. Keith Weinhold at Get Rich Education, be the first guy to tell you. He looked at us, he just did exactly what we did. He just copied the model. So we said, okay, we got to up our game. We're going to narrow our focus. We're going to focus on syndication. We're going to teach people how to raise money. Today, our top guy just called me the other day. He goes, he started with us 5 years ago. He just went over $100 million raised. $100 million. I never raised $100 million. I mean, as a teacher, that's pretty exciting when your student is like way better than you are. And he's going to be at our next event too. I talked about investing in someone else's deal to build. If you don't have money to invest, but you've got expertise, be an advisor. Find some way to get a branding position in a notable person's deal so that you can take some degree of credit for that. Obviously, join organizations, participate in them, get seen, National Association of Residential Property Managers, whatever it is. I mean, there's all kinds of different professional organizations. That's where the cream of the crop. Go to trade shows, network with people, and as I mentioned earlier, build a credible team. Your team is your partners, your investors, your staff, your advisors, your vendors, your customers, not just the skill they bring, but the Rolodex they bring and the reputation they bring. Think bigger than just the transaction. If that's like one theme in this presentation, think bigger than the transaction. Look past the money and look to the influence. Influence is the commodity, the currency of growth. If you have influence with influencers, and if you have influencers influencing on behalf of you, everything is so much easier. Become a conduit. You're students, you're here, you're learning things, but don't keep it all to yourself. Share it. Teach other people who are not as far up the chain as you are. You'll add value to their lives. They'll be loyal to you. They will share what they know because every human being has something to offer you. You can do it in your writing. You can speak. I do both. You can lead a group. You can be a connector. Just go and work an event and network people. Find the most notable person in the room. Get into a relationship. Then start introducing people. We've made a career out of just introducing people to our friend Robert Kiyosaki because everybody wants to meet him. And the good news is he wants to meet a lot of people. So we introduced them. If Robert called up G. Edward Griffin and said, hey, Ed, I'd like to get together with you, Ed would say yes. If Ed Griffin called Robert Kiyosaki and said, hey, Robert, I'd like to get together with you, Robert would say yes. But they didn't do it. So we found out that they wanted to meet each other and we made it happen. And so we got complete credit and value for doing something they easily could have done on their own but didn't do. You can do those things. Take advantage of the news. The news identifies opportunities. Part of timing is talking to somebody about something at the moment they're interested. You know, if you're familiar with social media, retargeting, you search for something, and then you go to a website, and every pop-up ad is that thing you just searched for. Anybody ever have that happen? Okay, so that's what they're trying to leverage is they know you're interested in something, and they're taking advantage of your awareness. But the news, the financial news in particular, every day makes people thinking about things, has people thinking about things. If you can figure out a connection between whatever you're doing and what the news media is already telling people to be thinking about, and usually they're introducing a problem. And if you can introduce a solution about the problem that everybody's mind just got filled up with, then you're going to have an opportunity. This is a site that tells you what the top financial news sites are. I'm on Yahoo Finance every day to find out what's going on. I pretty much pivot off that one, but I check this regularly. This is just January 2019, because I know that's what the marketplace is thinking about. They're doing the awareness work for me. That's marketing, making people aware. Let the news do the lifting for you. Your job is to figure out how whatever you do relates. Okay, so the main thing, and I'm going to wrap up here with just a couple things. One more minute. You're going to give me one more minute. Here's the main thing. When you go out in the marketplace, your main thing isn't to make money. Your main thing isn't to do deals. Your main thing is to build your brand and build your network. You build your brand and you build your network. You build your brand and you build your network. And you build your brand and you build your network. You build your brand and you build your network. And then one day when you have a deal that makes sense, you will put that deal in front of your network, and based on the power of your brand that they trust, they will buy. And then you just do a good job. Treat the money like it's your own, or better. Okay, couple things. We do a 2-day workshop called Secrets of Successful Syndication. It's coming up in 2 weeks in Dallas. We won't do it again until September. There's still time to get in at the early bird pricing. So I'll tell you how you can find more information about that in a minute, but that's coming up. We're going to have our $100 million man there. We're going to have attorneys. You're going to have to sit through this presentation again because this is the presentation I do there, but it's worth seeing again. And a whole bunch of other stuff we talk about. Networking. You're going to be hanging around with people that are actively out there raising millions of dollars, that are people just like you. And so you can talk to them about what it's like and what they wish they knew when they started and all that stuff. We create networking opportunities. We do our summit at sea. We got Peter Schiff, Robert Kiyosaki, G. Edward Griffin, Chris Martinson, Tom Wheelwright, Brian London, and probably a dozen other notable people all coming. Robert told me yesterday he's staying on the ship all 9 days. Dinner, drinks, dancing, seminars, round tables, going to the beach. It's ridiculous. And if you're interested in building your brand and you come back with a bunch of selfies of you partying with these people, socializing with notable people, that's probably worth $100,000. But it doesn't cost that much. It's not cheap though, but you're hanging out with about 200 of the right people for a week. Anybody go to summer camp when you were a kid? Right? You get in a room full of strangers, right? And a week later, you're best friends forever and you're crying because you can't wait to see each other again. That's what happens on the summit. We don't pay any of those speakers, not one. We've never paid a speaker in 17 years. They come because they want to. Because we put them around other influencers. And they like talking to you because you're real world. They lose touch with the real world. They can't have safe conversation with real world people because the groupies all force themselves to the front of the room. But we create a barrier to entry where it's only good people because it's expensive, but it's worth it. How to win funds and influence people. We do a 2-day workshop teaching you how to raise money, sales skills specifically for the art of raising money. So we don't do a lot of stuff, but those are kind of our 3 core things. You go to an investor conference like the Summit at Sea, you spend a week talking to investors and listening to thought leaders, you learn how to speak investor. You go to the syndication seminar, you learn what you need to know and what you don't need to know in order to become a successful syndicator, and you get to talk to real life people who are actually doing it. They're all real. And you come here and you find out when you're sitting down with that person who has the ability to write a $500,000 or $1 million check, what do you say? How do you present your offer? How do you close? If you have the ability to do that, then the sky's the limit because you can raise as much money as you want. So with that said, if you will do one thing, and I'm going to write it so you can do it, and then we're done. If you want to know more about us, rather than have me get up there and just ramble, just send an email to fig2019 at Real Estate Guys, because there's 2 of us, radio.com. And then we'll send you information about our events, our podcast, radio show, a newsletter, and you can check us out. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe and we'll leave you alone. All right? Thank you so much for your time and attention. Appreciate it.